With that, let's begin with the first keynote. I'm delighted to introduce Giselle Beiguelman. She is both an artist and a professor at the University of Sao Paulo, and she's come all the way from Brazil to share her insights with us. Her presentation is titled "The Archive is the World," a perspective that I, as head of collection information and archive, of course, fully agree with. Giselle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, and thank you for being here. It's really an honor for me to be presenting in such an important event as the CIDOC venue. I particularly would like to thank to the organizing committee of this edition, which allowed me to put my ideas and especially to thank to Marcia and Sandra for all their support. Really, thank you. And I apologize in advance for any grammatical errors or my accent problems. I can assure you that my Portuguese is wonderful, excellent. And this matter of language is also a good starting point for us, for our discussion today, as it places me in a position quite different from my peers at this event. As you all know, I am Brazilian, which also means I come from a country where the struggle for the right to memory is still central, given not only the historical colonialism and its strategies of erasing known European narratives and identities, but also because of the successive dictatorial periods and the violence of their extermination processes, which restricted access to our memories in different ways. Because of this, when the wave of digitization of collections began, it had kind of a significant impact on the debate on the right to the memory, not only in Brazil, but I think all global South. On one hand, it has opened the possibility of circulating narratives that were erased or forgotten for so many, many times. But from another hand, it introduced new challenges, such as the cost of digital storage and the need for improved internet access in many, many regions of the countries. What you see here is the state of the art right now in last year actually, 2022, but it didn't change so much in 2 years. What we have is 64% of the archives has their collections available online. Museums only 35, and libraries quite nothing, 9%. And the main reason for this is actually the lack of connection, the internet infrastructure. Yesterday there was an introduction about the relation between innovation and infrastructure, and I think it's amazing when you look at Brazil and many, many other countries and you see and you can say, wow, we have innovation in spite of infrastructure. And I think that this is one of the most amazing things happening. But from another point of view, when you look at the public realm and the state, how we have our distribution of access, we see that we still have a lot of problems in this in the context of access to digital infrastructure itself. Other barriers relate to the emerging data colonialism, and I think that from this point of view, we are all on the same boat. Actually, some data and information, they are quite clear about the situation. For instance, this chart, it shows the 500 most profitable US companies, and 5 companies, as you see, they concentrate more than 25% of the total value, while the remaining 495, they share the rest. So they are, those companies, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, and now more and more OpenAI, and that it's a kind of Microsoft. Nobody knows exactly what it is, but they are, I think that this information is relevant because they are at, sorry, the core of digital infrastructure, and they are, because of this, constitutive of the ways of accessing memory nowadays, and about what is memorized or not. The role they play are increasing important, and it's a kind of a very important political matter to discuss how much of their infrastructure interferes in the way we build and distribute our contents and memories. It would be naive, however, to believe that technological monopolies are the only obstacle to think about sustainable knowledge networks and open archives. In fact, it's necessary to question the very foundation of the notion of the archive, and it's really a paradox to debate or to talk about how to decolonize archive when archive is the most, and it's par excellence, the infrastructure of the colonial power. It's so it's difficult to deny that the aspiration to decolonize colonial legacies seems really paradoxical, since there is something innately colonial in the record-keeping systems that is the archive, the museum, the library. Archives hold institutional power because those who control them shape history, deciding what it is preserved or discarded, and influences public perception and historical narratives affecting our understanding of authority, memory, and identity. Certain narratives are prioritized over others, and this power is related and based on who controls the archives. This is evident in the historical treatment of marginalized groups such as Black women, LGBT communities, indigenous populations, and in summary, I think that the first question that archives bring us is who decides what should be forgotten, how should it be forgotten, and when should it be forgotten. However, archives can also be powerful tools today for subverting traditional power structures by providing marginalized voices with a platform, challenging dominant narratives, and fostering community engagement. There are several ways in which those counter-hegemonic archives can achieve this. They can do this, amplifying some voices through community-centric archiving practices that prioritize voices and experiences that are underrepresented of some underrepresented communities, like this queer museum, the Museum of What We Left. I love their name. It's a creation and education platform dedicated to architecture, art, psychoanalysis, and it assumes the museum as a plural, decolonial, and queer practices. Spaces like these also allow communities to narrate their own stories, thus reclaiming agency over other histories. They also function as countercultural collections, and the development of archives that focus on countercultural movements exemplifies how this new model of independent and counter-hegemonic archives are how they can cut the pressure from the mainstream in order to infiltrate new narratives that should be considered in a different historiography. Particularly important in this discussion is those movements that also take the digital realm and the digital platforms as a channel for new policies of reparation and also repatriation, those diaspora's digital archives. This one is a very, very amazing one. This is the Afro-Digital, Museu Afro-Digital, the Afro-Digital Museum. It has now more than, they have different qualities of documentation. Their main target is digital repatriation, and they encourage the donation of documents and the free circulation of information. They are all devoted to the memory of the Afro-Brazilian population. You know that Brazil, this is really a shame, but we were the last country all over the world to abolish slavery, and by the beginning of the 19th century there were more than 1 million Africans they don't came to Brazil, the Portuguese bring them to the slavery in the plantation. So this is a very important lack of documentation in the history of the country as a whole, to discuss what is the memory not only of slavery, but their own memories as communities that came from Africa and built another history and another community inside Brazil. And I think that the Afro-Digital Museum is really a powerful example of how digital platforms can be used to amplify voices and challenge dominant narratives towards a more inclusive future. In this way, they promote not only access to information, but they put on the move peculiar conception of a networked museum operation, and this emphasis on inclusivity, on participation, on donation, of memories fosters a sense of belonging and shared responsibility in the digital archiving process. They also organize different kinds of repositories, and they challenge frequently the museums and doing different similar classifications, but from objects that are not considered part of the main ethnographic historical collections. And another good example in this direction is the Museu da Laje, the Laje collection. Actually, Laje is the slab, but in Brazilian favelas, the Laje refers not only to a structure of the building, the cover of the building, but also refers to a social and recreational space. It's also the extension of the living space. As the family grows, it builds another laje and another one, and so you have those kinds of architectures that are more impressive than Gaudí. I cannot, sometimes they are really, wow, how could they do this? And it is there. So the laje is a very important social and cultural definition, and this acervo da laje began as the memory of the peripheral population of Salvador in the northeast of Brazil, the capital of Bahia, and it was founded by two educators from the University of Federal of Bahia, and their emphasis is on not only preserving culture, but promoting cultural memory, staying connected all the time with their donors. They have a very important operation on social media to call for donation. They have now more than 20,000 pieces, including works by local artists, historical objects from their neighborhoods, thematic libraries, and much of the engagement is focused on the physical space, but all the action is conducted online. And as I said, especially via social media. But something that really disturbed me in this archival fever that we are living in, those actions are really important, but they are not the only. We see different kinds of archives and museums appearing every day, and these proliferation, that it's not limited to those important initiatives I just mentioned, they are creating a kind of state that I call the documentary overdose, or this overload, which could turn us in a kind of civilization of Funes. El Memorioso is the protagonist, Funes, of a very a nice story by Jorge Luis Borges, and the famous Argentinian writer. And it was a man who could record everything, but he lost his ability to memorize because he couldn't think anymore. He has so many information. He knows everything, every minute, what happened at every second of the day, that he lost his ability to think, because to think, as Borges says, is to generalize. And this is the state of our present day. Data never sleeps, it's true. The numbers are really amazing. What happens every minute on the internet, 4 million posts on Facebook, how many pictures, how many videos, 600, almost 700,000 reels on Instagram in 1 minute. It's really an overdoses of documentation and data circulating, and it's really amazing if we think how it changed with the internet. I was looking for some numbers from the Brazilian Postal Service providers, and in 1995, when the internet arrived commercially in Brazil, the volume of postal traffic was 7 billion objects. So letters, faxes, telex, telegrams, everything, 7 billion. Last year, this was 535 millions. It's a decrease of 90%, and they are still alive because of the internet. Those postal traffic services, because they are moving the online shopping resources. So it's just an example that it's more and more surprising when you get the idea that globally we send and receive kind of 347 billion emails a day, and you are included on this, right? Here, just here, here and now, of course, everybody was checking its own emails, sending email, receiving emails. It's so we changed everything. Internet is, there is no doubt that there is before the internet and after the internet. But the question for us is what from all this information becomes, all this data becomes real information, and how much of this information become memory? Because we do not have, it's impossible to deny the amount of the circulation of data. If you check how we changed the audiovisual culture, comparing what in the 90s that a parameter was in the United States, where they usually watch more television than all over the world, that was 4 or 5 hours a day, to today that we have a transmission of streamings of more than 300 hours per minute. So in 1 minute, it's equivalent to 43 years if you make the conversion. So every minute, nowadays we are living 40 years in video transmission. It's impossible to get everything, and that is the demand for finding ways of organizing those materials. It became a kind of cliche to say that the internet never forgets. Oh, never. But digital culture doesn't allow us to remember. The way we lose information, disk, equipment, this is not the scenario, this is real. This is a deposit of the municipality of São Paulo, where they throw everything in a very organized way. You see their desktops and tables, and then you have printers, and there are piles and piles of lost memories concentrated in, of course, digital and electronic materials occupies today the space as a whole. It's a kind of contradiction. We are fighting to, oh, let's put everything in the digital system, let's digitize everything in order to save space. And what you do with all those equipments that don't work anymore, you just throw away. So you have those abandoned cities, those new digital ruins, and it's, I don't know if all this mania around the design from the 60s, the 50s, is not a nostalgia for a time where, wow, memory was in one place, and you know, if you come back, it is still there. Today we live in a kind of memory space like this, that you never know how much time you will hold this information that you are fighting so much to digitize, store, and find ways of distributing. Memory became kind of an online commodity that can be discarded by companies that monopolize communication, service, and this can be done anytime. I usually ask what will happen to the history of COVID-19 if Google decides that YouTube is no longer a relevant marketing niche. Will we lose the record of the most dramatic health crisis in history? Because this already happened. Just remember GeoCities that crashed and erased all the history of the so-called Web 1.0. That part of this is stored thanks to two amazing artists, Olialealina, and that began this project 1 terabyte for a kilobyte age, but everything was almost lost. They're documenting today means questioning the logic of a static repository, but also is an entire new panorama of museum of losses, that we are losing data all the time. At the same time, as we saw, there is an overwhelming production of collective knowledge that is being distributed in social media, personal archives, personal museums, and small digital collections. And how could you imagine or realize to work with all these distributed information condemned to disappear if we just follow the marketing trends of the companies that are the main monopolies of the systems, but they hold also our social memories. I think that the COVID example is a very disturbing one, because it can happen at any time. And we shared our personal memories, our social memories. So from what happened in the Wells United Nations organization to our personal life, everything was shared via and stored on YouTube for 2 years. And at any time, it can disappear. So how can we give status to this as social documentation, as documentation that it's produced by all of us, and in some ways we need to reclaim the ownership of these materials, not as private memories, but as social memories. And some institutions, I think, that they are trying to combine this movement that it's so characteristic of our time of producing and sharing online in crowdsourcing methodologies to rebuild their own archives. One basic example is what the Museum Paulista, that it's one of the most problematic museums all over Brazil, has these colonial heritage and this mythological approach to the colonizers as kind of, wow, they saved the country from the barbarians that were supposed to be the indigenous populations, and that today we know that they have culture in history and everything that challenges ours, and they decided to organize all their collection. The first step on the glance of the Wikipedia, that it's the gallery, libraries, and museums division of the Wikipedia, and Wikipedia was to say that they are the most, well, they are the best glam all over the world. In a few years, they could not only structure their metadata entries, improve their descriptions about their own catalog, but make available a large amount of their collections. I think that many different institutions are doing works on this by this way. For instance, the Library of Congress with the By the People project, that they share a technology to transcript their documents with the participation of their public, and many others that will go quickly just to show what we are doing in this movement. When we have, I and the group that I coordinate at the University of São Paulo, where our point of departure is, wow, we do not have infrastructure, but we need to have archives. And we based our experiences in all these practices carried out by different social movements like the Afro Digital Museum or the Acervo da Laje, and also by the Wikipedia movement, and also what the Library of Congress is doing, involving the audience in the production of their data, and conscious that if you do not have archives, we can really fabulate new ones, and that it's the idea of the second generation original. That, of course, will make big problems, but I think that the digital future is anchored on this image, especially because you cannot restore digital works. Actually, most of the times you rebuild the work from the beginning, and the danger is that in the future we will have not Mona Lisa, we will have the future, the present, past, and future. We lose the possibility of doing. But at the same time, I think it's possible to take all those problems and challenges into account in order to imagine counter-hegemonic archives. Our decision was, in this way, to work trying to move from the notion of cataloging to the notion of social documentation, the move from the management of the archive that demands so much infrastructure, specialized teams that we do not have, and I don't think that we will have someday. I think, our history shows that we need another perspective of memory and institution, and to organize the access via ideas of digital curation. We were inspired by a very nice piece by Adam Harvey that extracts information from online video in order to map container bombs in use in the Middle East, and they developed a system with computer vision that detects in 10 million videos in milliseconds or many evidences, or the way we did with the ZKM, this nice project, the Intelligent Museum, the Decomposite Collections, trying to dive into different art collections and rebuild another historiography of art based on the gaze and not on style. And what we are doing now, excavating different forms of photographic archives in order to build an architecture and a design archive. So I think that in some ways, the lack of infrastructure also move us in the direction of, if you do not have the archive, you can create your archive based on other materials that are stored in different places online. Here we worked in a collection, on a collection of 15,000 images that basically is a kind of a social network of documenting different buildings. And from those images, we extracted with computer vision different information, not only regarding to the elements that are not described, but also creating a solution for a visual archive to people, to blind people or people with difficulty of vision. All the descriptions, they are audio accessible. And the most amazing thing is that one of the complaints in Brazil is that we do not have a design archive. The Brazilian design is stored in private galleries, nobody has access. And actually, the design archive is everywhere. We extracted those images from these other collections, and so you are in front of the first public design archive in Brazil. It's amazing that how you can really contour all those difficulties of infrastructure, technology, rebuilding technologies that are oriented to other means, and by doing so, following a statement that Glauber Rocha, that it's very well known, it's director that already died. That was the idea similar to what Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, that of the cannibal metaphysics, that it's the anthropology from the point of view of the native, that our originality is our hunger. This is not an apology of miserability, this is the opposite. This is to assume that we can, there are different ways of confronting the lack of infrastructure, the lack of huge budgets, the lack of governmental support. Of course, these are the ideal conditions, but the reality is a little bit different. I think that Europe has a very peculiar situation, and this is not the same all over the world. And in spite of all those lacks and problems, I think that we can be really creative and reclaim what is more important in this discussion, that it's our right to memory. Because it is constitutive of our right to everything, to the public space, to our policies. Eleutisika used to say that museum is the world, and I think that the internet created a situation where we can say that archive is the world. And all these data is really there, but we must reclaim it as first as information and then as document, record, and memory. I thank you very much for your attention. And at acervosdigitais.fao.usp.br you can see some of our prototypes trying to excavate other people's materials, but authorize it that they are in Creative Commons systems in order to organize different archives.
Yeah, thank you so much, Giselle. This was really great. I assume you have a lot of questions for her, but first we go to our next speaker. Karin, please come forward.